So our guest today is Leland Sklar, studio and touring bassist for acts such as Phil Collins, Toto, and James Taylor, just to name a few. Now, his bass playing has appeared on over 2,600 albums. So even if you haven't heard of him, you've heard him. Thanks for joining us today, Leland.
I'm thrilled to be here. I've been looking forward to talking to you, so let's have some fun.
He's been looking forward to talking to us.
Of course. I read the trades.
Looking forward to talking to you as well.
Well, I read the trades. I know who's important, and you definitely are at the top of the apex.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. So the last year and a half has been difficult and strange for everyone, to say the least. But for you, not being on the road for probably the first time in a long time must have been a bit of an adjustment. So how are you doing, Leland? And how did you keep your sanity over the last year or so?
Well, first off, my sanity is always questionable, so we can bypass that one right there. Let's see. I grew a beard. No, it was one of these things that our band, we did a thing called the Rock Legends Cruise with Roger Daltrey and Nancy Wilson from Heart and a bunch of people at the end of February of last year. Mm-hmm. And that was the last thing that we played live. As soon as we came off of that is when COVID struck. And I was looking at, I looked at a year's worth of solid work that evaporated in an instant, like so many people have gone through. But I'm a real kind of type A ADHD sort of personality. And I thought, what am I going to do now? Rather than, I didn't look at it as just downtime. And I kind of hunkered down and did a book, started recording from home, created a YouTube channel, which I've posted one video, at least one video a day, every single day since March 23rd of last year. I think today it was my 706th video that I've put up. And it's been really an incredibly busy period. Now, it's a double-edged sword because I'm a realist about what we are as a global community going through. And I've lost a number of people to COVID and friends of mine that have lost businesses and home, so there's that dark side. But I really wanted to really approach this as what could plan B be? I already had plan A disappear on me, which was touring and recording. So It's been an incredibly productive year doing things I never expected to do. And now that things are opening up a bit, I've committed really deeply to all these things. So now I'm like twice as busy as I've ever been because I'm doing all the things that I would have been doing to an extent. I mean, the touring hasn't opened up like it was or anything yet, but I'm just busy around the clock, and I'm grateful for it because I'm just not a good person with downtime.
Understood. Yeah, I'd rather be busy than sitting still.
Yeah.
So I get that. That makes sense to me.
So in staying busy, your new album with the immediate family was released in August. And this is your second release with the group, which is a modern iteration of the section?
Well, it's not really. The fact that three of us were in the group, the section, back in the 70s, but it's a very, very different group than that. It's myself and Russ Kunkel and Danny Korchmar and Waddy Wachtel and Steve Postel. Now, Danny and Russ and I have been playing together for now going on 52 years. And Waddy joined us a couple of years into that. So he's probably about 49 years into it with us. And Postel is like the kid on the block. He's the new kid. I've been working with him about 15 years. So it's very different because this section was kind of a rock fusion instrumental group. And we are basically in our heart and soul a rock band with vocals and everything. And when we started this up, when the gigs we were doing, we would tell people we were a cover band that only plays originals. And because that's really the nature of what it was. This all started with Danny getting a record deal with a label in Japan that wanted him to do songs that he had written with other people and for other people the way he wanted to do them. Like Dirty Laundry he did with Don Henley, and All She Wants to Do Is Dance, and Machine Gun Kelly with James Taylor. I mean, so he's been involved. So we did that album for Japan and went over and toured it, and then came back and realized we were just having too much fun. At that point, it was Danny Korchmar and the Immediate Family, which Cooch named the band because he said we were really like his immediate family. And then we signed a deal with Quarto Valley Records here in America, and we finished the album that came out in August. We finished before the pandemic, and it was supposed to be out in November of last year, but it wasn't really worth releasing it because there was nothing you could do to promote it or anything. Everything was locked down. So,
Right.
So it just came out. We've been releasing EPs throughout the year and doing things like a cappella videos and creating videos throughout this whole period. And now we're finally actually getting to go out in November, and we're going to start touring on the West Coast and East Coast just to kind of launch things. And amongst all that, there's a great documentary movie called The Wrecking Crew that Denny Tedesco made about the studio musicians of the 60s primarily, of which his father was probably one of the greatest guitar players who's ever graced the studio, Tommy Tedesco. And Denny's, they're actually right now in editing a documentary film about our group, which will be out next year. Cool. So there's lots of really cool stuff going on, and we talk to each other like pretty much every couple of days. We have band meeting Zooms with our management and stuff. So things are exciting. We're really excited about this. The album got really great reviews. It's a bunch of trade magazines have picked up on it and raved about it, and we entered the Billboard Blues charts at number 6.
Awesome.
Oh, wow.
So we're laughing to each other. So we're thinking, oh, maybe when the Grammys come, we'll get nominated for Best New Artist.
After 50 plus years in the industry, that would be fantastic, though.
Yeah, it would be a pretty goofy thing. So we'll see what happens with it all.
With as goofy as the world is right now, I can see that happening.
We need goofy.
We really do.
We really do. If you can inject humor into your life right now, it's the best thing, I think, for everybody.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. So, Leland, I'm not a musician, but I pretend to be one because I stayed at a Holiday Inn.
Again, you are a musician.
Exactly.
He's a fantastic steering wheel drummer.
Exactly. But I do love listening to music. It's the heart and soul of everything that I do in life. Mm-hmm. So although I don't exactly understand everything on a technical level as to what's happening or why or what else, like I said, I love to listen, and I listen to just about anything I can get my hands on. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I've noticed over the years, because I have several friends who are bass players, is that bass players, including my cousin as well.
And my husband.
Yeah, your husband. I used to work with a guy who was a bass player. And a few other guys, but they always tend to be the butt of a lot of jokes when it comes to bands and things like that. But I've always seen bass players as the glue that kind of hold a band together and kind of keep the rhythm section going in the proper direction, and affect the timing of the band. So in your opinion, how much control does the bass player really have over a piece of music?
Without us, they're nothing. Completely useless failures.
My husband's just going to snag that soundbite and use it for the rest of his life.
I mean, I think a lot of times we end up being sort of the brunt of things because we're generally at the back of the stage, not at the front, unless you're the Beatles or something, Cream or something like that. But for the most part, everybody sort of equated bass players to being like Bill Wyman, that really quiet shadow at the back of the Stones who just, kind of held it together. And that's one of the things that always appealed to me about my instrument is there's a ton of responsibility that comes with it in terms of you are the liaison between the rhythm and the melodic side of the music. You can change one note and change the whole character of a song just by a note placement. And you don't have to be, whipping it out at the front of the stage all the time like the guitarists and the singers do. So you can pick your moments where you're going to maybe step forward and do something. But for the most part, I really love just being the person that's really focused on holding this all together. And of course, it changes from project to project. But I also love the frequency of bass. The first time I played, I started on upright bass, and the first time I held a bass when I was 12 years old and plucked a note and felt that vibration of it, I just went, done, I'm in, count me in.
There it is.
Yep.
Nice.
So I love it, but I've been very fortunate in my career that I've worked in almost every genre and with all kinds of different artists and different situations. And I love a challenge, and they all present their own challenges to me. And so to have to dig my heels in every day and discover new things and come up with parts and stuff it's an adventure. And I really, I pinch myself every day because I really appreciate it. Plus, I just like pinching myself anyhow. So it's like a win. It's a win-win.
It's a good way to check and make sure you're still here.
Absolutely.
That's right. I'm still alive. All right.
Yeah.
So a quick question that just kind of popped in my head. Speaking of music and bass players and all that, one of my favorite bass players has always been Robert DeLeo from Stone Temple Pilots.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with his work or not, but I've always loved the fact that in every, you can always tell a DeLeo song because when he and Dean write a song together, there's a walking, I call it a walking bass line throughout the entirety of the song that just keeps the rhythm of the song so tightly together. Is there a bass player that really kind of shaped or your look at music or inspired you really to want to reach out and continue to playing bass after you got that first vibration?
Yeah, certainly, like so many other players I know, McCartney, the Beatles had a huge impact on me, and I so loved, especially kind of the mid-Beatles on period, the White Album, and during that period, Revolver, and Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. Paul's melodic sense and the way he approached bass, I've always loved that. But I really like everybody. I mean, I was a huge Entwistle fan and Jack Bruce.
Sure.
There's a tremendous amount of bass players that I really appreciate, and it's also kind of fun just to glean a little something from everybody, just to stick in your Rolodex here, so that you've got it. At some point, you might be working on a project, and all of a sudden, something you heard one of those people do once pops into your head, and you make your version of it. So I'm kind of affected by everybody that plays the instrument, from the simplest, most, almost infantile playing, which can be really charming, up to, like the Jockos and Victor Wootens and Steve Baileys and all these, monstrous, great players. But I'm more than anything, I'm proud to be a member of the bass community. And I try to take full advantage of everybody else's ideas when I can.
It's a pretty cool community to be part of.
Yeah, it really is.
So in addition to music, you've also released a book, The Everybody Loves Me, which is kind of a bit of a coffee table book with an interesting theme to it.
It truly, it's so big it could almost be a coffee table book. I mean, a coffee table. I mean, it's 6 pounds and about 6,000 photographs, and it started as a total accident. Where in 2004, when I was on tour with Phil Collins on his first final farewell tour, during that 2004 tour, there was talk that Phil was going to retire at the end of the tour. He had it. And we were out, with band and crew. We probably had about 125 people on the road, and we'd all become quite a family. We'd been on the road for a year at that point. And I thought, if he retires, I may never see a ton of these people again, because they're from all over the world, and it's the tours that bring us together. So I decided to just take a picture of everybody. go around, take pictures, and make a little folder for my memory banks. While I still had a memory during my life, I could go back and review it and recognize what this was all about. Well, as luck would have it, the very first person I went up to take a picture was a guy named Steve Winstead. His nickname was Chinner, and he was my bass tech on the tour. And he was so overqualified because I really didn't need hardly any help on tour. I've toured alone so much that we would joke every day. He'd say, "What do you need?" And I go, "Nothing." Yeah, and then he would go off and do other things. So he's working on his laptop, and I go up to him and I say, "Hey, Chinner, give me a smile." And as he's typing, all I see is, gives me the finger. And I go, "Wow, that's actually pretty good." So I went and I got Phil and Tony Smith, his manager, all the band, all the crew, truck drivers, caterers, everybody, and made my little folder of everybody, having their moment. And I put it away for a couple of years. And then I went on the road for the first tour I did with Toto. And I thought, that was kind of cool on Phil's thing. So I got everybody on that tour to do it. And I got up to about 300 pictures. And it took on a life of its own at that point. I started getting shots everywhere you can imagine with everybody imaginable, both famous winos I would find on the street. I mean, it was all over the place, and it ended up with over 12,000 photographs. And and as luck would have it, I was at a function here where I live in Pasadena, and there was a guy attending it named Richard Tremarchi. His nickname is Blue, but he has a company called Art Alliance. And I told him about all these pictures. And I said, everybody's been bugging me to do a book for years of all, this stuff. And he said, "Let's do it. Let's just do it." And so I put all the pictures on a hard drive and gave it to him. And he spent a couple of weeks kind of going through these 12,000 photographs. And we honed it down to 6,000. And then we would sit in the office and just figured out thematic things, how to assemble it all. Now, to me, it's a book of humanity. There's not like, here's the celebrities, here's the everyday person. There's no names in the book. So a lot of people don't know they're looking at Art Garfunkel or Sean Penn or these people. I'm catching them in moments, but I took every picture practically in the book. And there's certain themes that go through it, but they're very subtle themes. But it's to me, there's a finite amount of ways of giving the finger. But faces are infinite. And the thing I enjoy the most when I'm looking through the book is people's faces when you've empowered them to flip you off. How Charles Barkley flipped me off as compared to Jack Black. And it's different, slightly different gesture, but the faces are totally, unique unto them. And so it's been a ball. It's been a hard slog with this thing, though, because I'm self-published and I've been shipping all the books myself and stuff. And so far, I think I've shipped out about between 3,000 and 3,500 myself. And now I'm looking for other options of getting them out there, distribution places and stuff. But it was really a labor of love. I really enjoyed it. And the book, everybody who's gotten it went nuts over it. They said, "This is the coolest thing we've ever gotten." And just they send me pictures from all over the world of the book sitting in their living room on their coffee tables. And they said, everybody comes in and looks at it, and then they can't put it down. They just want to keep reading and reading. And
I can imagine.
Very little reading. You don't have to be educated to see a picture of somebody flipping you off, but it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. I mean, and there's a bunch of people in there, like Charlie Watts. I've got great shots of Charlie in there, and there's so many that are gone now. That it's really, I'm really so grateful that I've kind of immortalized them in this book. So, and then I had to create a website for it. So I was going to have it be lelandsklar.com. And of course, somebody owns that. Then I thought leesklar.com. Somebody owns that. So I just thought, the hell with it. I'm not going to pay somebody for my name. So we came up with LelandSklarsBeard.com.
There you go.
So the book is there. I've got, we came up with T-shirts with my beard on the front of them. So I've got people all sending me pictures of them wearing shirts with my beard sticking down on it. And plus I was a graphic artist in college all through. So I've got museum quality prints of drawings and paintings available and all this. So I became kind of an entrepreneur through this whole pandemic, something I never thought I would be doing. So that's the Cliff Notes version of a long story, if you can believe that.
We like long stories.
Long stories are our favorite. Those always have the best answers because there's all these little cool details that are just kind of knitted in there. So
not editing at all.
No, we don't worry about the editing. That's somebody else's job.
Okay.
So, so you've worked with a ton of artists, both live and in the studio. We kind of referenced some of that.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, being a music fan, going through the list of some of the people you worked with, it was kind of like, ooh. I kind of got excited by some of this, and we understand that we've talked with a few other touring artists and other bandmates and other things. And they kind of treat the road less like Las Vegas. What happens on the road stays on the road.
Well, to an extent. Yeah.
To an extent, right. So are there any stories that you can share with us, the funnier the better, that are able to leave the road?
Oh, I mean, the thing is, the amount of stories that you would say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, are like maybe 3% of what's gone on the road. The road, for the most part, is first off, it's a hard job. From the get-go, you're leaving all the things that are part of your life, your family, your home, driving. I mean, there's so many things that disappear, but the joy of walking out on stage is completely overshadows those feelings at that point. And like most players I know, we always say, look I do all the gigs for free and I get paid to kill 20 hours a day. Kind of thing, because that's really the hardest part. But there's been, all kinds of crazy stuff happens on the road. It runs the whole gamut from really, difficult things like, bus crashes, and we've gone down in planes and things like that, to just kind of some of the silliest adventures you could ever imagine. But most of that stuff really is only meaningful if you were in the moment. Like when you try to describe it. But there were, on my YouTube channel, one of my earlier videos that I did talked about a family that I met in Ireland. I met them actually in Glasgow, Scotland, traveling to Ireland. Mm-hmm. And I developed a bond with this family in 1990. And it was a remarkable experience. This mother and her 3 daughters and her little boy, David, who was like 4 at the time. And we are still in touch. And I got together with them on the last Phil Collins tour when we played in Dublin. And little David showed up, and he's 34 years old now. And they still talk about this encounter that we had, and it's a major part of their lives. So there are things like that are amazing. Or when we did, I toured Brazil with James Taylor after we did the first Rock in Rio festival. And when we played in Sao Paulo, we played a soccer stadium, and one of James's songs at that time was Only a Dream in Rio. So it had gotten, it wasn't real dark, but it was dusk. It was like a dark dusk at this point. Well, as we started playing the song, the audience were holding up lighters, and they were flicking their lighters on the beat. Well, because this was like a 100,000 seat stadium with delay from the stage, you saw this wave of fire going the whole length of the stadium throughout the song. And we were like almost crying. It was so emotional to watch this happen. Those things, or I'll tell you what, still one of my favorite things is to be on stage with Phil Collins playing In the Air Tonight. Because the anticipation that the audience builds up for that drum fill in it
as soon as you say In the Air Tonight and I hear just the drums,
Yeah, it's palpable, and as the tension of that song builds and builds and builds, I get goosebumps just talking about it. But every single time we ever did it, as that would hit, and you'd suddenly see all the arms in the audience come up playing the drum fill, and people back in before security being what it is now, a lot of people brought their own drumsticks, so they would be playing air drums and stuff. It's amazing. I mean, there's so many things that touch you. Or like on the 2004 tour, our stage with Phil, there was a ground level of it. Then we had stairs that went up both sides to a second level. And Chester Thompson's drum kit was on one side and Phil's was on the other, on the ground floor. And so the audience was used to seeing Phil always walking around the stage during the course of that song. And then he would get to step up to the drum kit just before the drum fill would hit, and he would do it. Well, on this tour, we did it differently. So you could tell there was kind of an anxiety in the audience because Phil would be singing the song and walking around. Then as the drum fill kind of was nearing, he walked upstairs to this other level. And you could see people going, he's never going to make it. He's never going to make it. Well, like an instant before the drum fill, another drum kit came up out of the floor and he stepped right into it up on the other level and played it. And then the place went completely berserk. So it's, it's just moments like that are really amazing. Or like when I tour with Lyle Lovett and his large band, and you're sitting on stage with like 16 unbelievably great musicians, and it feels like a freight train on stage. It's just cranks along. So, and playing with Toto was amazing. And there's so many things. I mean, there's so many great memories of so many things. And a lot of it, like when I've done interviews in the past, they want to hear some dirt. They want to hear, was there mud wrestling in the dressing room and, all that crap. I go, man, never. I'm sure there was lots of that going down with certain groups on the road. But for us, almost everybody I've worked with is a real meat and potatoes music pros. And backstage is real boring. Everybody's like just, sitting and talking, warming up, online at this point, just emailing and playing Scrabble, whatever. It's not as the excitement starts when you step on that stage and the lights hit you. Then you go, yes, yes, this is why I am here.
That's such a cool feeling. I miss being on stage.
Yeah, it's magic.
I love the story though about little David and the family from Ireland. That's pretty cool. About you come back. Little David's 34 now.
Well, one of the best parts of it was I invited the family to our show, and they all came, and these three little girls they went and they bought autograph books, and I took them around and got everybody from the band, all the crew. We filled their entire book with everybody involved on the tour.
That's cool.
But we were sitting after the show in the dressing room, and they're all in there. And the Cheryl, who was our publicist, asked David, she points to Phil. He's just seen the show. And the essence of this whole thing was this little boy thought I was Santa Claus. And that's how this whole thing started. And so Cheryl looks at David and goes, do you know who that is? And points over to Phil. And he goes, yeah, that's Santa's helper. Yeah, nice. We're crying at this point. It's like just unbelievable. But it goes much deeper. And I tell the whole story about this on one of my videos on my YouTube channel. And it's deep. It's deep.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
We'll make sure that people get directed to it in the YouTube channel, because if you're not familiar by now that Leland has a full-on YouTube channel, you need to check it out. There's some really cool videos I've been binge watching. So if you've seen a spike in your numbers, that's why. Both myself and Kathleen's husband, John, have both been doing the same thing. So yeah, we've been having a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, there's like almost 165,000 people on the channel now. And it's, again, with the pandemic, this started by accident. We had just come off of Phil's Not Dead Yet tour. And I had a couple of people write to me and they go, yeah, we saw you like in Germany or Argentina. A lot of those gigs were stadiums. And they said, we could hear, but we missed some of the details in it. So I ended up having our front of house mixer send me a board mix of one of our shows. It turned out to be a show from Adelaide, Australia. And what I did is I loaded it into my laptop, plugged in a Bose speaker into the headphone jack, and have a bass amp on the floor next to me. And I just mixed it so that I was playing the track from the show through the speaker, but I had the amp a little bit louder than the track so I could play along with each song and show the bass parts. And so far I've done everything on the channel. Everything I've done technically has been on my iPhone. And about three, and I started with the first song of the show and was going to run the show in order. And by the third day and the third song, I had people writing to me going, man, we love your YouTube channel. And I'm going, what are you talking about? And they go, oh, no, that new YouTube channel you're doing. I said, I have no clue what you're even I was just putting up some videos just to, show some detailed stuff. And somehow it evolved into this. So now I'm like 700 and some videos into it. Today I played songs I did with the Doors. I mean, everything I've put up there is something I've played on, and I either play along or there are things that the magic was in the recording when we made them. And for me to sit and play along with it would actually denigrate it, because that's not how it should be heard. And that's not the feeling that we had. So right. I talk about all the people that were involved, musicians, producers, artists, studios that are long gone. And I've sort of turned into Mr. Rogers. It's like it's a trip.
It's a great piece of musical history you've got going there. There's some really cool details and things about not only the songs you've performed, but the people you performed with. And I can't speak highly enough for what I've watched. So
yeah. I appreciate that. I really love it.
And that's amazing. And you should do stuff that you love. That's part of the enjoyment of life, is going and doing the things that you love. But you talked about being on the road, but being off the road since the world has shut down.
Yeah.
You've been home all year for the first time in decades. But you've also been married for 50 years.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for me and my husband? We are celebrating our 7th wedding anniversary this December.
Congratulations. When in December?
The 13th.
Okay, well, ours is the 10th.
Hey, very close. So how do you keep it going? How do you make it last?
Well, I mean, the thing is, we're fortunate that we're independent people. So it's not like my wife needs me to be there every second to validate her life, kind of a thing. She has her own circle of friends and likes it. And the pandemic's been far harder on her than it's been on me, because I can find things to be busy with. But her real pleasure was being with her friends, going to the theater, going to movies, going to restaurants and all this. So it's been more difficult. So she spent a lot more time in downtime. And it has been slightly weird being home all this time, where we're used to me being gone a chunk of the year. And but like you said, we've been together a long time, so we've got our, we're doing fine. We haven't been at each other's throats. There's been no, like, get a tour, get out of the house, and you're driving me crazy kind of stuff. I think it's just being tolerant and accepting, and especially during a time like this where you're really kind of in an aberrant situation compared to what you've been used to. You have to deal with it, and you just have to be on your wits all the time and be smart about things. But we get along great, and she knows more about Amazon Plus and Netflix and stuff than I'll ever know. She's binge watched a ton of shows and fills me in on them. And then I've been spending more evenings just kind of sitting with her and the dogs watching these shows. I tend to not sleep much. I'm pretty much an insomniac, so I'm one of these people that's probably about 3 to 4 hours sleep a night. And so I'll end up going and working really late into the night when I've got like people have been sending me, like Ian Pace, the drummer from Deep Purple, is doing a solo project, and he's been sending me tracks to put bass on for him, and
Nice.
did some stuff for Julian Lennon, and I finished a couple of projects for
Nice.
people in New Zealand. I'm doing another project for a guy in Ireland, and have another song to do this afternoon for a producer friend of mine. So, I mean, I can really load a day with a ton of crap to do. And so we find our own space. It's not like we're, in each other's face all the time. Now, we never had kids, so our kids are the dogs. So like you're talking about dealing with a 3-year-old, so that
Yeah.
you got a different situation on your plate that can be both stressful and unbelievably great.
Yeah.
So
I do have to say though that your outlook on the perspective versus your wife's outlook, with you're more okay with it because you're okay with being alone and you can keep yourself busy.
Yeah.
That is so my husband. Like, he's loved this, that I don't have to go places. I'm not supposed to see people. Like, it is introvert's paradise for him.
Yeah.
Versus me, who I'm like, but people.
I know.
I miss friends and hugs, and it's been harder, definitely harder on me and the toddler. Yeah, hugs. Oh, virtual hugs are fantastic, even. But I mean, legitimately, it's been harder on me and on the toddler, who's supposed to be in this social situation, whereas the past year and a half, she's been home with her mom and her dad and her grandmother, and
it's a weird situation, because this is the socializing period of their lives to really understand. I mean, I thought about that when in 1989, when Phil Collins' daughter Lily was born. And it blows my mind that she just got married, and stuff, and she's this really successful actress. But when she was a baby, the first year of her life was on the road with us on the But Serious tour, and she had like 150 dads. I mean, it's like she was this baby, and we were on the road a year, so the first year of her life was with all these people that were hugging her and playing with her, and it started with her in a basket, and by the end of the tour, the caterers had to move the coffee machines and stuff because she could stand up and reach the and I was thinking, the tour ended and she went home with mom and dad. That was it, and they were on the verge of getting a divorce at that point. So I mean, I thought, Jesus, with the thing that this poor kid must have gone through in terms of like shock at the end of this. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, I can be really busy, and I'm really comfortable alone. I can go, like, if my wife goes away, she went and visited her sister in Tucson for a week. And other than having to, I was happy not to talk for a week. Just talk to the dogs and did my stuff around the house and worked. But everybody's treated this different. I know people that have gone into like a profoundly dark, depressive period with this, started drinking, started, going through a lot of misery through this. And other people who are just going, at some point, this will be behind us. It could have been behind us long ago, but that's a whole other thing. And I just want to, I just want to be there when it's all done. So we've been very safe. And the best thing was when our band had our own bubble. And once everybody was vaccinated, and we started playing together again and rehearsing and writing and going in the studio. And the thing that's crazy is we've got our new album out now, but during the course of the pandemic, we went in the studio and cut another album, which will be out next year when the documentary film comes out.
Yeah.
So it hasn't slowed down the creative juices or anything like that by any means. It's just,
you've had to be extra creative with your creative juices.
Yeah, and everything's just a little bit different. I mean, it's kind of like going through a wormhole into an alternate universe, and we've just tried to make the best of it that we possibly can, and we've really kind of maximized what was available to us. Not so much even just the time, but discovering. We're fortunate to live in a time right now technologically where we can do things like these Zooms and stuff. And the band, all the videos we've done so far this year, they were incredibly well received. But each of us was filming our own segments at home and then sending them to a friend of ours, Mike Perlmutter, who's a really brilliant video editor. And then he was putting the videos all together. So we found a way to make this all work during a period where things were really not working.
Yeah.
And so it's been a real learning process. And plus, like I said, I had never recorded at home before the pandemic. I had always either been in a studio, or if somebody wanted me to do something for them, I would have them send me files, and then I would call a number of friends of mine who had really great home studios, and I'd say, you doing anything this afternoon? How about if I come over, let's throw bass on, then I'll take you to dinner, kind of thing. And it was our social life. Sure. But all of a sudden, with the advent of COVID, going to somebody else's house and hanging out with them was off the plate. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine contacted me, and he said some friends of his, they were going to do a cover of Easy Lover, Phil Collins, Philip Bailey.
Oh, yeah.
And they said, we'd love for you to play on it. And I said, I'd love to, but I can't. I'm not set up to record at home. And Gussie, who was going to be singing it, he had friends at SSL, and they sent me an SSL 2+ interface. And I contacted Steve Postel from our band, who's got a studio at home. And he gave me a kind of a peanut gallery tour through GarageBand, showed me how to do it. And I've been doing tons of home recording with that. And the thing that's funny is on one of my video channels, one of my videos on the channel is the Easy Lover thing that we did. And it's over 500,000 views on it. So, I mean, it's nuts. And then I also got into Cameo now. And I've done about 65 Cameo videos for people and been sending those off. And my book is now about to be released as trading card NFTs. So, I mean, I'm looking at a million options of things to do. And I'm not good at, like I said, at sitting around. So I've got, lots of, I'm like the plate spinner on the old Ed Sullivan show. And I've just got all these things in the air, and I'm trying to keep everything spinning and up in the air.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's actually a perfect segue into our last question for you.
Yeah.
Now, with everything that you've done as a musician and everything that you've learned as a working professional, even throughout the time of what Kathleen and I like to call the end times of the last year, what is the one thing, if you could pick one gem, what is one thing that you would tell that kid who's just learning to play, starting a band in their parents' garage to kind of help them on their way?
Well, first off, I think the most important thing is have fun, especially if you're starting out. I mean, just enjoy the camaraderie, the community of being with other players. Try to find other players of a similar caliber so that you're all kind of lifting each other. There isn't like one great player and then one terrible player, and it's never going to quite. But I think the community of musicians is a pretty fabulous community. So I would try to find people you like to hang with, number one, and not going to get in arguments with and stuff, but play as much as you possibly can, especially if you're going to be playing out in the garage and stuff. Make sure you're doing it loud enough that the neighbors are going to call the police and have them come and tell you to turn down, because then you know you're doing something right.
There you go.
But have fun. Have fun. This is regardless of where it ends up for you. I know great players that never got a break and, never had the opportunities come along that I've been fortunate enough through what I've done to have. But, they've gone on to other professions and they still play and they still, enjoy music. And they could be anything from lawyers and doctors, dentists, you name it. They've found other avenues of income. But the passion for music never left.
I like the advice of play loud enough that your neighbors call the cops.
Absolutely. That's for me, that's just like every time I would get thrown in Facebook jail, I would wear it as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
So I think the cops coming and saying, neighbors are complaining, you got to turn down. You turn to look at the rest of the band and go, yes.
Yeah. We're loud enough for a stadium that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of my favorite memes going around right now is it says, if you haven't violated Facebook community standards, do you really know what's going on in the world? So.
Yeah, I find it so fascinating when I get these things that say, you've gone against our community standards. And I'm going, you obviously have no standards if this is going against whatever you guys are thinking about here. And especially during the past election cycle and all that stuff, I was usually, on an average, kicked off about 150 days a year. I was in Facebook jail. And so I was working it good.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Leland, we have had so much fun interviewing you today. So much fun talking to you. We would like to know where we can link for our viewers to find more about you. Obviously, your YouTube channel, because everybody should check out your YouTube channel. But what else you have coming?
Well, if they go on YouTube, just pull up my name and it'll direct them to the channel. It's just Leland Sklar. For the book and all that, go to lelandskalarsbeard.com. I would love it. Anybody who's listening, go to, also on YouTube, go to the Immediate Family site and subscribe. Hit subscribe, don't cost nothing. And we're building brand with that. We have a website, the Immediate Family Band, and we're opening up now with swag and all that. On every one of my videos, there's a link to my website and also to a thing called Flat 5, which is where my clubhouse is. And twice, if they join the clubhouse, twice a month, I do about a 2 to 2.5 hour live stream.
Cool.
This Wednesday is that. And then once a month, I do one-on-one Skype and FaceTimes with people. Do about 22 people in that day, one after another. It's all individual. And on both of on that site, also in the clubhouse, there's a gift shop, and there's T-shirts and hoodies and mugs and pictures and stuff. So it's a full service kind of a situation. And then, or anything else, just, Google me up and I'll show up like gum on your shoe,
Perfect. All right. We'll make sure that we place those down in the episode description so everybody has a chance to check out all your other works and everything else.
Great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Absolutely. And we just want to remind everybody, subscribing is the single most important thing you can do for our show to make sure that we continue to get guests like Leland Sklar here to come and have these great conversations. But please go check out his channels. Check out, of course, his personal YouTube channel, The Immediate Family, all those other things that are down in the description down below there. It's going to help not only Leland, but it's going to help us.
Hey.
It's down there. It's down there. I promise. But it helps more than you guys will ever know. And remember, kids, pop culture, it's all around you. It influences every part of our lives, all the decisions we make. So be sure to come back next week. We're going to have your fix waiting right here for you.
Thanks again, Leland. This has been so much fun.
It's an absolute pleasure, and give that baby a big squeeze for me.
Oh, I will, definitely.
Okay.
All right, goodbye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.
Copyright 2023 FSF PopCast.
Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF PopCast. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpopcast.com. Original music by Jordan Michaels.